Today's story is so haunting it lingers long after the final word, unfolding beneath thunder-split skies and a desert swallowed by floodwaters. It's a place where love and vengeance collide at the edge of survival. It begins with a single letter, small and unassuming, yet powerful enough to pull a woman across a continent and into the arms of destiny. Before we kick off this adventure, don't forget to hit like on the video and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. The storm rolled in without warning, swallowing the Arizona desert in a fury of thunder and blackened skies. Dry arroyos turned into churning rivers within minutes, mud sucking at anything that dared cross it. Lenora Cade crouched inside a shallow cave carved into the hills, staring down at the canyon where water roared like a freight train off its rails. Every hour she lost to the storm felt like another nail sealing her brother's fate. She had come west for one reason: Bram Cutter. He was the last of her blood. Typhoid had taken Alistair Cade and Miriam Cade the winter before, leaving Lenora alone in a house that felt too quiet to breathe in. 3 years earlier, Bram had ridden toward Arizona territory chasing silver and the kind of fortune that lured desperate men across half a continent. At first his letters came steady, filled with bold sketches of copper sunsets and promises that he'd strike it rich any day. Then the letters grew scarce. Then they stopped. The silence stretched thin as wire until she could hardly sleep for the not knowing. The final letter hadn't even been Bram's hand. It came from Thaddeus Rourke, claiming to be his partner. The note was short, cold, and urgent. Bram was ill. If she wished to see him alive, she needed to come at once. No explanation, no details. Just an address in a place called Copper Creek and a tone that left no room for delay. Lenora sold her home, her belongings, everything, to finance the journey. Now she sat 3 days' ride from that town. Rain slashing down so hard, the world disappeared beyond a few yards of gray. She pressed her back against the stone wall, wondering if she would arrive only to say goodbye to the boy who had once carried her across frozen creeks and promised she would never be alone. A figure stepped out of the rain as if the storm itself had shaped him. He moved with the easy confidence of a man born to this land. Water streamed from his long, dark hair, his buckskin clinging to a lean, powerful frame. When he saw her, his gaze flicked to the rifle at her side. He stopped at the mouth of the cave and slowly lifted both hands. "I don't mean you harm," he said evenly. His voice carried the cadence of the mountains, his English sharp and deliberate. "Just looking for shelter from the flood. There's room enough in here for 2. Lenora studied him the way she'd learned to study men since leaving Boston, measuring distance, threat, intention. He was Apache. That much was clear in the hard lines of his face and the weathered look of someone shaped by wind and sun. Tall, controlled, carved from the same stone that surrounded them. His dark eyes watched her carefully, weighing her just as she weighed him. She should have been afraid. She had been raised on stories that painted men like him as danger incarnate, yet he waited. He did not step forward without her word. "Come in," she said at last, lowering her rifle but keeping it close. "No one deserves to drown in a storm like this." He entered quietly, shaking the water from his hair like a wolf emerging from a river. He chose a place across from her, close enough to share warmth from the rock, far enough to respect the space between them. He slipped a worn satchel from his shoulder. Inside were dried strips of meat, a canteen, tools she didn't recognize, but suspected were useful in more ways than one. "You're traveling alone," he observed, no judgment in his tone. "That's uncommon for a woman of your kind. And dangerous." "Most things worth doing are," Lenora replied, pulling her cloak tighter around her shoulders. Mud streaked her hem. Her hair had long since slipped its pins. The polished facade she'd once worn in Boston had dissolved somewhere between Missouri and this canyon. "My brother is in Copper Creek," she said. "I was told he's sick, that I should come quickly." "Copper Creek," he repeated softly. Something flickered behind his eyes. "I know it. 3 days from here in fair weather. Longer now. You know what's happening there?" "I know men go there chasing silver and leave with empty hands, or not at all." He paused. "I know it belongs to a man whose shadow stretches over the mines, the town, even the law. And I know my presence would not be welcomed." "Thaddeus Rourke," Lenora said, her voice sharpening. "He wrote to me." The Apache's jaw tightened. "Rourke is a rattlesnake dressed like a gentleman. He owns the mines, owns Sheriff Amos Ketter. Men who work for him don't stay healthy long. Men who cross him vanish. Folks call it bad luck." His gaze held hers steadily. "If your brother is ill, it may not be sickness that put him there." The words drained the warmth from her body. Bram wasn't just sick. He could be trapped, or worse. The letter that dragged her across the country might have been bait. "Are you certain?" she demanded. "Or is that rumor?" "I've watched those hills for 3 years," he said. "I've seen how Copper Creek runs." He leaned forward slightly. 2 weeks ago, a young Easterner from the mines, fits your brother's description, was taken to Rourke's mansion. No one's seen him since." "You've been watching me," she said quietly. "Or do you watch everyone?" "I watch everything," he answered without apology. "It's how I'm still breathing." A faint trace of something, almost a smile, touched his mouth. "You caught my eye yesterday. A woman alone in country that swallows the unprepared. I wondered what kind of fire drives someone like that. You followed me. I made sure you didn't get yourself killed before you reached wherever you're headed. This land shows no mercy to strangers." He gestured toward the raging torrent outside, where water hammered through the canyon like unleashed wrath. "When I saw the storm building," he continued, nodding toward the curtain of rain beyond the cave mouth, "I knew you'd head for this ridge. It's the only solid cover for miles." Lenora should have bristled at the fact that he'd tracked her. Yet what settled in her chest wasn't fear. It was relief. She had felt eyes on her since entering the canyon, had blamed it on nerves and too many lonely miles. Knowing it had been him, watching not as a predator but as a guardian of sorts, was oddly reassuring. She cleared her throat. "What's your name? I can't keep calling you the Apache." "My people call me Kiona," he said. "Others have given me different names over the years. None of them matter." The name struck her like distant thunder. Even back east, stories traveled, whispers of a warrior who slipped through army lines and vanished into stone and shadow. And he was here, 10 feet away, rain pounding the desert into submission. "You're surprised," he said, a faint smile tugging at his mouth. "You thought a legend would look more fearsome." "I thought a man with a price on his head would be more careful," she shot back. "They say you're worth $1,000. "You're no threat to me," Kiona replied calmly. "You can't turn me in, and there's no one within miles to tell." He leaned back against the rock wall. "I gave you my name because you deserve the truth. You crossed half a continent for your brother. That kind of loyalty earns honesty." His gaze sharpened. "You value devotion. I value strength. I value people who refuse to bow to what the world says is inevitable. I saw that in you the moment you rode into this canyon." The storm raged for 3 days. 3 endless nights of thunder cracking the sky, of floodwater clawing at the canyon floor. The forced closeness blurred the line between strangers and something else entirely. They rationed what little food they had, sharing jerky and water by firelight. Lenora spoke of Boston, of stiff classrooms where young women were taught silence instead of thought, of realizing she didn't fit the narrow life prepared for her. Kiona spoke of a childhood under open skies, of watching his people pushed from their land piece by piece. He told her about Sihona and about Talek and Nara, lost in a cavalry raid that left more smoke than mercy behind. He admitted the rage that had once ruled him, and the discipline it took to turn fury into purpose. He spoke of loneliness that gnawed at him when the fighting quieted, of the burden of being a symbol instead of simply a man. On the second night, as rain battered the cave and firelight flickered across stone, Lenora studied him. "Why are you telling me this? We've known each other 2 days." "I have a reason." He shifted closer, warmth radiating from him. "The moment I saw you, something in me recognized something in you. Like I'd been walking toward this meeting without knowing it. All the loss, all the battles, they led me here." "That sounds like a man who's been alone too long," she murmured. "Maybe," he said softly, "but that doesn't make it untrue." His hand rose slowly, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. His fingers brushed her jaw, rough skin startlingly gentle. "You're beautiful, Lenora Cade. Not just to look at. You're unbreakable, even when you're afraid." "I am afraid," she admitted, her voice barely above the storm. "I'm afraid Bram is already gone. I'm afraid this journey was for nothing. And I'm afraid of what I feel sitting here with you." "And what do you feel?" She met his eyes, saw the fire there, and chose honesty over caution. "I want you to kiss me. These last 2 days, I've felt more alive than I have in years. Whatever happens after this storm, I'll carry this with me. Then let me give you something worth carrying." He kissed her, slow at first, as though testing the truth of it. His hands cradled her face with care that contradicted every tale of bloodshed tied to his name. She pulled him closer, fingers threading through damp hair, hunger rising fast and fierce. The kiss deepened until both of them trembled. "We should stop," he rasped, resting his forehead against hers. "If we don't, I won't want to. And you deserve more than a reckless mistake in a storm." "What if I want more?" she whispered. "What if I want all of it?" Conflict flickered across his face, desire warring with restraint. When he opened his eyes again, they were steady. "Then I'll give you everything. But not like this. Tonight, let me just hold you. Let me remember the sound of your heartbeat before the world demands its due." They lay together beside the fading fire, her body curled into his. There was an intimacy in the quiet that ran deeper than passion. His strength wrapped around her without force, without claim. For the first time since leaving home, she felt safe. Morning came softly. Lenora woke to Kiona's lips brushing hers, slow and deliberate, drawing her from sleep. "I couldn't wait," he murmured against her mouth. "I needed to know you were real." "I'm real," she whispered back, pulling him closer. "And I'm not going anywhere." Outside, the storm began to loosen its grip, rain easing from fury to a steady hush as the world prepared for whatever came next. There was no rush born of the quiet urgency of two souls who understood time was a borrowed thing. Hands learned the language of skin. Mouths traced promises in the dim glow of dying embers. There was no rush born of recklessness, only the steady patience of people who knew this moment might be the only one fate would grant them. Kiona touched her as if she were something holy, committing every line and curve to memory. The way a frontiersman memorizes the bends of a river he may never cross again. Lenora answered in kind, her fingers gliding over the scars carved across his chest and shoulders. Each mark told of survival, of bullets, blades, and battles that would have broken lesser men. She traced them as though reading scripture written in flesh. When they finally joined, tears slid from Lenora's eyes, not from pain, but from the overwhelming certainty that she had stumbled upon the very thing she hadn't known she was missing. What bound them in that cave ran deeper than desire. It defied the lines drawn by hatred and history. It rose above every rule the world had written for people like them. "I love you," she whispered later, cradled against him as dawn's pale light crept across the stone walls. "It sounds foolish. We've known each other 3 days. But I love you, Kiona, and I don't regret a single second." "And I love you," he answered, tightening his arm around her. "I thought that part of me was buried with Sihona, with Talek and Nara. I believed I would walk the rest of my years hollow. You proved me wrong." She rested her palm over his heart. "What happens when the storm clears and the world comes back for us?" "We save Bram," he said simply, sitting up and brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Thaddeus Rourke is dangerous. But danger has chased me my entire life. Together, we'll pull your brother out of whatever cage he's in." "You would risk your life for a man you've never met?" "I would risk it for the woman I love. And Bram Cutter is part of you. That makes him mine to protect." He drew her into one last slow kiss before rising. "The storm's breaking. We ride." The land beyond the canyon looked reborn and ruined all at once. Flooded gullies carved new paths through rock. The air smelled raw and clean. It took them 2 days to reach Copper Creek, moving through country reshaped by water and wind. Kiona guided her with the certainty of a man who knew every ridge and wash. They traveled mostly under cover of night, resting in hidden draws he'd once used to elude patrols sent by General Maddox Keir. In those quiet hours, they shared pieces of themselves neither had offered another soul. Lenora found that behind the legend stood a man of sharp mind and dry wit. Someone who could speak in 3 tongues and pause mid-sentence to identify a hawk by its cry. Kiona discovered that beneath her refined upbringing was a woman starved for freedom, one who had never truly belonged in drawing rooms and narrow expectations. They claimed whatever privacy the wilderness offered, hidden canyons, wind-cut cliffs, loving each other with a certainty that only deepened. Afterward, they would lie beneath open sky and speak of futures neither was sure they'd be allowed to have. On the final night before reaching town, Kiona's voice turned serious. "When Bram is safe, come with me, into the mountains. My people live hidden, but we live free. I'll teach you to survive as we do." "A life running from soldiers?" she asked softly. "A life at my side," he replied. "Would that not be enough?" She looked at him, at the firelight dancing in his dark eyes, and understood that whatever she said next would decide the shape of her life. "It would be more than enough," she said. "It would be everything." Copper Creek rose from the desert like a scar. Muddy streets cut between weather-beaten buildings. Saloons spilled noise into the dust. Supply stores and a brothel thrived off men who bled themselves dry in the mines. Above it all, perched on a hill like a vulture, stood Thaddeus Rourke's mansion. White columns, glass windows, and a lawn so green it mocked the thirst below. Kiona left Lenora concealed among jagged rocks overlooking town, while he slipped ahead to gather information. He returned at dusk, his expression tight. "Bram's alive," he said. Relief flooded her, then died at his next words. "He's locked in the cellar of Rourke's mansion, guarded day and night." The letter was bait. "Rourke believes your brother uncovered something that could destroy him." What did Bram find? Proof of murder. Miners who tried to organize, men like Orland Pike, died in accidents your brother knew were staged. He was preparing to take evidence to Corwin Hale. Rourke found out first. Lenora's jaw set. Then we get him out? It won't be easy. The mansion's crawling with guards. Amos Ketter likely has eyes on every road. Rourke expects you. Kiona took her hands, his gaze steady. I have a plan. It's risky, and you'll have to trust me. I trust you with my life, she said, and with Bram's. Tell me. The plan bordered on madness. Kiona would stage an attack on the mining office, drawing guards away from the mansion. In the chaos, Lenora would slip through a servant's entrance he'd mapped, find Bram, and escape through the rear grounds, where horses would be waiting. As he secured the revolver beneath her dress, his hands were calm, precise. If anything goes wrong, he said quietly, you take your brother and ride. Don't wait for me. If anything falls apart, Kiona said, his voice low but firm, you take Bram and ride north to the mountain pass I showed you. My people are camped there. Tell them I sent you. They'll keep you safe. Nothing is falling apart, Lenora shot back. I'm not walking away without you. We both ride out of this alive. A faint smile touched his mouth. You're stubborn. I learned from the best. Dusk settled over Copper Creek like a held breath. Then the ground split open with thunder. Dynamite ripped through the mining office in a rolling chain of explosions, each blast timed to echo like a full-scale assault. Flames shot into the evening sky. Men shouted. Guards scrambled from Thaddeus Rourke's mansion, racing downhill toward the smoke. Lenora moved. She slipped from shadow to shadow, heart pounding so hard it nearly drowned out the chaos. In her mind, she counted the seconds Kiona had given her. The narrow window before someone realized the mine wasn't the true target. The servant's entrance stood unguarded, just as he'd promised. She slid inside into a warm kitchen, heavy with the scent of roast beef and boiled potatoes. The normalcy of it turned her stomach, knowing what lay beneath this polished house. The hallways twisted like a maze, but she followed the map Kiona had etched into her memory. She encountered only one soul, Veda Bloom, who froze at the sight of the revolver in Lenora's hand before fleeing without a word. The cellar door creaked open to darkness and damp stone. Bram Cutter hung in chains against the wall, face swollen, ribs sharp beneath torn fabric. Bruises painted him in shades of violence. When his eyes lifted and found hers, recognition flared, then fear. Lena, it's a trap, he rasped. He knew you'd come. I know, she answered, already kneeling at his shackles with the tools Kiona had given her. Her fingers trembled, but her hands did not falter. And I didn't come alone. We're getting out before they realize. The last shackle fell. They nearly made it. 10 feet from the back exit, a voice slid from the dark like oil. Well now, Thaddeus Rourke drawled. He stepped into the lamplight, impeccably dressed, revolver aimed square at Lenora's chest. He wore the polished look of a respectable businessman, but his smile carried venom. Miss Cade, he said smoothly. So devoted, marching straight into a snare a child could spot. Now I have you both. Your brother's little inconvenience can finally be erased. You're mistaken about one thing, Lenora replied, her voice steady despite the cold pressing in around her ribs. I didn't come alone. Rourke's expression flickered. Too late. Kiona emerged from the shadows behind him, silent as falling ash. His blade pressed against Rourke's throat before the man could blink. The revolver clattered to the floor. Don't move, Kiona said quietly. Don't shout. Don't breathe wrong, or you die. Rourke swallowed. The escape blurred into motion and breath and pounding hooves. Kiona bound Rourke in his own cellar and vanished into the night with Lenora and Bram before the guards returned. They rode hard beneath a moonlit sky, leaving Copper Creek shrinking behind them like a bad dream. They did not slow until the mountains swallowed them whole. Bram healed slowly in the weeks that followed. Tekken and the others tended his wounds without question because Kiona asked it of them. When Bram could finally ride, the evidence he had gathered was delivered to Corwin Hale. Charges followed. Rourke's empire cracked. Whether he faced a noose or found another way to slither free no longer mattered to Lenora. She had chosen her life. She learned the mountains, the quiet signals of wind and wildlife, the patience required to outlast patrols sent by General Maddox Keir. She learned the language and traditions of Kiona's people. And she learned that love, once found, demanded courage to keep. Each morning she woke to Kiona's lips brushing hers. "I couldn't wait for you to wake," he would murmur. "I needed to taste you." She would smile and answer the same way every time. "Then taste me. I'm yours." The years were not gentle. Soldiers hunted. Rumors of relocation and reservation lines crept closer like storm clouds. Life on the run was as harsh as he had warned her. But it was free, and it was theirs. They raised 3 children beneath wide western skies, Arden and Mercer growing strong and watchful, Elowen fierce and bright. The children carried both worlds within them and learned to survive in a land that would never fully claim them, yet could never quite erase them either. On the last morning of her life, decades later, Lenora woke as she always had, to Kiona's kiss. His hair was streaked with gray, his hands bore more scars, but his voice remained the same. "I couldn't wait for you to wake," he whispered. "I needed to taste you." She smiled, breath soft but steady. "Then taste me," she replied. "I'm yours." She closed her eyes with his hand wrapped around hers, his presence warm as it had been in that cave long ago. Every mile, every risk, every impossible choice had led her here, to this mountain air, to this man. It was exactly where she belonged. "Finally, let me send my deep thanks to you. We appreciate you more than you think. If this tale stirred something deep inside, we invite you to remain part of this frontier of memories. More true stories of honor, compassion, and destiny are waiting for you here. Subscribe, share, comment, and thank you for riding with us today. Aviso legal barra disclaimer. Our content is designed for artistic and entertainment purposes and may reinterpret historical themes using fictional touches. We apply AI tools thoughtfully, only to support production, while keeping human supervision over editing, emotional tone, and narrative coherence. We always comply with regulatory guidelines for AI-based media and avoid deepfake practices or identity manipulation. All supporting components remain legally sourced. Please ask for authorization before sharing or adapting any segment. Your respect makes it possible for us to continue telling meaningful stories.